Coach, let me ask you this. What would you do with an extra 6 hours a week? What if your next 5 coaching clients didn't need a single sales call? What if you could sell high ticket B2C coaching without chasing, without pressure, without pitching, using nothing but a simple Google Doc? Because I've seen firsthand that you don't actually need enrollment calls to sell coaching, even if you're selling to real humans, not just other coaches selling to other coaches. And even if they haven't been following you for a very long time. And no, you don't need a fancy website or sales page. You don't need endless calls. You don't need to be spending hours in the DMs. You don't even need to be good at sales. What you need is a simple, soulful sales doc that works only because your content and your transmission have done the heavy lifting for you. See, if your audience trusts you and trusts your method, the sales doc becomes a confirmation, not a complex conversion. And that's what this training is all about, a practical, tactical breakdown of how to close high-fee B2C coaching offers without pressure, without chasing, without a single sales call. And if you stick around to the end, I'll share the 4 questions to help you know if you're ready to ditch sales calls for good, because this isn't for everyone. Now, you may be wondering, who the heck am I to be talking about this? Well, my name's Joel, and I've made over $250,000 using nothing but a Google Doc and a handful of well-placed casual conversations. No high-pressure calls, no push, just resonance and just being there at the right time. And it started 9 months into my coaching journey when I was fully booked with one-to-one clients. And I just knew at that time it was time for me to move to group coaching. But I'd burnt out previously with my first business, a food tech business, a food tech startup. And I made a promise to myself that life comes first. And the way I wanted to live meant that I had no space to take sales calls. So I made a simple standard that I would fill my new group coaching program called 63 Days to Personal Power only using a single sales doc. And of course, I was proper nervous. I'd only seen other B2B coaches doing it at that time. And the first time I sent the doc out, I hesitated. I nearly pulled out and went to calls, but I was like, I'm sticking to this. My life is more important here. Now, what I saw was that when someone's ready, they don't need to be convinced. They just need information. They need confirmation. And I heard a first yes, and then another, and then another. And eventually I filled 6 men's groups, each with 10 to 15 men in, paying around $1.5 to $2.5 grand, all without a single call. Now that doc has now helped me sell over 250 grand in high fee B2C coaching. And along the way, I learned 4 things. The sales fulcrum that makes it all work. The 2 sales you must make before you hear a yes to your offer. And the 5 key assets that drive sales without calls. And finally, how to create supply-demand tension that has clients chasing you, which I'm going to cover all now. Let's dive in. So the sales fulcrum will determine the success and how easy it is to sell with a simple Google Doc. And actually, when you understand this, you understand marketing and sales. This has unlocked so much for me. And I have Taki Moore to thank for teaching me this. Now, when you look at this seesaw, you can consider a sale being made when the right-hand side tips over and the left-hand side goes up. The forces that are in our control on this right-hand side that will push the right-hand side down are things like our offer, quality, and our sales skills, whether that's in enrollment calls or simply in the Google Doc or sales doc. Opposing those forces are our prospects' fears and doubts. Another way to think of this is that on the left-hand side, you have the perceived risk, and on the right-hand side, you have the perceived reward. A sale is often made when the perceived reward is greater than the perceived risk, and that's the goal of our marketing and sales, is to increase the perceived reward, decrease the perceived risk. And we can influence this by improving the quality of our offer, which I'll talk about later, improving our sales skills, whether it's in an enrollment call or the Google Doc, which again, I'll talk about later, or decreasing the perceived fears and doubts, the perceived risk. But what's the biggest determinant of how easy it is to sell is, of course, the position of the pivot. If the fulcrum, the pivot point, is over to the right, a huge amount of force is needed on the right to make the sale, to tip it over. Whereas if this fulcrum is over on the left, then we only need a tiny force over on the right to make the sale. This is simple maths and engineering, which I'm sure you get, right? Now, what this pivot point represents is essentially context in our client's mind. Now, imagine your Auntie Jane launches a business coaching program on the back of running a successful side hustle, selling knitting for £5,000 a month. Now, compare that to Alex Hormozi, who launches a similar business mentoring program for 3 months. Of course, Alex Hormozi is going to find that very easy to fill. A simple text message saying, I've got 5 spaces, don't really know what I'm going to run you through, but you'll be mentored by me for 3 months. Here's a payment link. That's all he's going to need to do to fill that up. Whereas your Auntie Jane is going to need to really work on her offer and, of course, her sales skills to fill those places. So that is why the biggest determinant of success of selling with a Google Doc is going to be the position of the fulcrum, how much context you've created in your client's mind. And that is the purpose of your content and your marketing. And if you're anything like me, you would rather spend time creating at your local cafe than time on a sales call trying to convince and push and manipulate. And what's more is that an hour spent creating is actually far more valuable than an hour on an enrollment call because there's no leverage in sales. Consider working on your sales like renting, because when you're renting something, there's no accrued or compounding value. When you stop renting, you lose the money. You have no asset that belongs to you. It's the same with sales. The minute you stop pushing, the minute you stop driving and sending messages and DMs and selling, the minute you stop doing that, the minute your business stops growing. Whereas when you pour that energy into building assets and content that compound, the more you do it, the more valuable it gets, like investing in assets like property. So actually an hour spent focusing on marketing and content is far more valuable than an hour in enrollment call, which is why I'd also much prefer to be spending time creating, building assets. So if you've decided you're like me and you want to free time creating versus selling, our goal with our marketing is to make sure sales only happen when our prospects are really hot and ready to buy. That is the sole goal of our marketing, is to take someone from being cold to hot. But it's also about filtering out so that when we get on the phone or send a sales doc, they are really red hot, ready to buy, but also a really big fit, but also a match to the type of clients you want to work with. Whereas if you're a more sales-focused, direct response, outbound, hard-hitting salesperson, this line, the point at which you start sales, happens much further over here. Again, not for me. If it's for you, probably not worth listening to the rest of this video. Now, what I've learned and experienced is that there needs to be 3 sales made in your client's mind. The last sale is to your offer. And if you have done the previous 2 and they are really hot and ready to buy, this offer just needs to confirm the details and answer a really specific set of questions, which I'll share towards the end. The previous 2 sales are selling your audience on you and what I call your UFS, which is your unique framework for success. But the first sale is you. This is your being. This is getting people to buy into who you are. Now, there are no real tactics or strategies to hack this. This is your transmission. This is your vibration. This is essentially your being. And what I say to my clients is that Your life is the work. Your content and marketing are essentially the breadcrumbs. So go and live an inspired life. Go and fall in love with your life. What that means to me is living my perfect average day as much as possible. And that's why living a dream life is more than actually just the amazing things that come from living a dream life. It's actually how you attract more clients, by becoming magnetic, by becoming someone others want to follow. It's the most profitable thing you can do in your business: become energetically attractive. So once you've created that life for yourself, it can be as simple as sharing your beliefs, sharing your deeply held convictions, sharing your values, sharing what your life looks like, giving people a behind the scene look at what your life looks like. So once you've got people bought into you and there's that emotional resonance, the second sale that needs to be made is your mechanism, your way of getting people from point A to point B. And the more saturated the market you're in, the more you have to sell your unique way of looking at things. Take, for example, the fitness space is a very competitive, saturated market, which is why now you have to really emphasize your unique way of doing things. There was once a time where you could say, hey, come and sign to my program. I'll help you move more and eat less. But we've all heard that message now. And it's why now we're constantly looking for the next thing. Yesterday, for example, I signed up to this primal movement workout. And I was like, this is new for me. I've not once heard of this way of operating. Got me really excited and new. So that's the second sale to be made, is selling people into your unique mechanism. And once you've done those two sales in your content and your marketing, the third sale, as I said, is your offer. Another way to think about this is building connection at the level of the heart, emotional resonance. The second being building connection at the level of the brain. That's not a tree, it's a brain. This is about shifting people's paradigm. It's about helping people think differently. It's about actually thinking for your audience so they can speed up their results. And the final level of connection is the level of the hands. This is about giving people the tangible route from point A to point B and making it really clear and giving them the confidence that you know how to take them there with your hands. And how we do that with our marketing or content is with all the time that we freed up from the sales calls and by building assets. Now, there are 5 key assets that we need to build to drive sales without calls. The first being a mini magnet. And the goal of this mini magnet is to get your ideal clients to just raise their hand to signal that they are your ideal clients. For example, last week, I shared a content prompt that turns one long form piece of content into 6 authority pieces of short form content. And I had around 60 people reach out and ask for that mini magnet, for that prompt. And what that did was shake the tree in my audience, and my ideal clients kind of signaled that what I help them solve, they're interested in. But what it also did was allow me to collect their emails in return for the prompt, which brings me on to the second asset, which is the Yes Momentum email sequence, a series of emails which sells your audience on you, your values, your core truths, your deeply held convictions, your story, your unique mechanism, and ultimately drives them to the third asset, which is a story sales letter, which again is a video that sells people on you, your values, your stories, and your unique mechanism. Repetition here. Bruce Lee said, I don't fear a man who's learned 1,000 kicks once. I fear a man who's learned one kick 1,000 times. That's the goal here, repeating our values, our convictions, our unique mechanism. And at the end of the story sales letter, we make a very casual call to action to send us a DM of a keyword for more information of what it looks like to work with us, which when they do, we can ask them some questions to qualify them. And if they're the right fit, they're coachable, they're ready, and they're open and willing to invest. If they say yes, they join our offer. And if they say no, that's cool. They stay in our ecosystem. And what often happens is that our fifth asset, conversion events, usually sweeps people up, catches those that have said no to the core offer, but they're more willing to say yes to a conversion event that's, say, 50 to 100 pounds. And it's why it doesn't actually matter how long someone's been following you, but it matters more how much of your content they've consumed. and how deep they've gone into your world. With this setup, you can take people deep into your world very quickly. And it's how I've created clients within days of people following me. So this is what I call the authority flywheel, which turns followers into leads using that mini magnet, leads into customers using conversion events, which are events which I'm already running for my community, customers into clients by sending them the simple sales doc, no push, no manipulation, just a casual invite. Are you in? Are you out? Turning clients into raving fans by building a sacred tribe, and then ultimately turning those raving fans back into leads by creating case studies from all the successful stories. And at the heart of this is a email and content ecosystem that's driving this all forward. And the reason why this works is that it ticks every one of Google's 7-11 rules, which says that your audience needs to consume 7 hours of your content across 11 touch points and in 4 different locations before making a purchase. That is why the authority flywheel works. This is about lead efficiency versus lead volume. A funnel is about lead volume. How much money can I extract from someone as quickly as possible? It's a buy or die strategy. Whereas the authority flywheel is about capturing, nurturing, and compounding trust. And it's why you don't actually need a huge amount of volume and traffic to make this successful. It's why in a recent month, I made $50,000 with an email list of just 600. So those 600 are pre-sold on me and my mechanisms, so that every time I make an offer, whether that's a conversion event, a freebie, or my core offer, there's always people ready to buy. And that's the goal of this flywheel, is to be there when it's now, to be there when they're ready. But of course, we still want to drive traffic into this flywheel, and we do that with campaigns. Now, the success of any campaign will be determined by how much supply-demand tension you create. Why is it that Rolex is so freaking expensive? Well, there's more demand than there is supply. I think you have to wait like 6 to 9 months to buy a Rolex. That is the dynamic that we want to create in our campaigns, in our marketing. It's why I recommend only being open for 1 week in a month, or maybe 1 week in 2 months. That limits the supply. And in the preceding weeks, we want to increase the demand with mini magnets, conversion events, so that when we run a client campaign and essentially say, hey, doors are open, there's pent-up demand and we've reduced the supply right down. This is what gets people to move quickly, and this is what will determine the success of your sales doc. So let me show you how this works in real time. So in November, I ran a workshop for my community called Clients by Christmas, and I sold tickets to the workshop for £50. I ran some content with some call to actions to comment a keyword. And those that commented a keyword got sent the landing page automatically using AI automation. This person signed up. On signing up, he entered my Yes Momentum email sequence where he was channeled to my story sales letter. At the end of that story sales letter, I invite people to send me a message with the word info for more details, which he did. Now, at that time, the doors were closed to the Elevator Coaching Collective. And I simply asked, would you want to be added to the waitlist? He said yes. Then when doors were open, I went back to everyone on my waitlist and I messaged them, hey, I'm opening up. I've got this amount of spaces. Would you be interested? He said yes. I sent him the details and he replied, I'm in. I asked him, would you want full one-to-one support? He said yes. This is the authority flywheel in action. And this is how you sell with a simple Google Doc and no enrollment call. This client was pre-sold into me. He was pre-sold into my mechanism so that when I shared the offer doc, it was a simple, yes, I'm in. I'm in for the full one-to-one support. No call needed. So as promised at the start, here are the 4 questions to ask yourself that will determine whether you're ready to move to selling with a simple Google Doc. And the first is, do you know your audience better than they know themselves? And a great yardstick for that is, have you had around 100 enrollment calls with your ideal client? Because the success of your content and marketing will be determined by how well you know your audience. As the great Dan Kennedy says, marketing is about entering the conversation going on in your client's mind. If you don't know what's going on in your client's mind, it's very hard to create good content and powerful marketing. Number 2, have you got cash in the bank? This is not a quick fix. It takes time to build that context, to build credibility, to build trust in your audience's mind. And having cash in the bank will give you that confidence and remove any temptation to go back to sales calls and hold firm on your standards of selling without a sales call. Number 3, and similar to number 2, is do you have recurring revenue? And finally, do you like sales calls? Because if you do, don't do this. It's very simple. But if you're like me and you prefer spending time with your loved ones, with your children, with your partner, or at local cafes, creating content for your clients, then maybe it is time to give this a go. Now, if you feel like you are ready to sell with a soulful sales doc, click the link below to get access to a full training on how to write it. You'll get there a full breakdown of the exact doc structure, some swipe files for you to steal, and the key questions you need to answer in the sales doc, along with a custom AI assistant that will write 90% of it for you in your tone of voice. Plus, I'll walk you through how to actually use the doc to sell in the DMs without pressure, without being weird, and without chasing. It's all inside. Click the link below, and I'll see you inside the training.